If someone had said to me that day that that was the day I was going to die, maybe I would have slowed down a bit. Maybe I would have told the children I loved them. Where I went, I could see this light. It was a very bright light. And I just felt I was in this open space, very, very strong, bright light. I felt very warm. I felt connected to the space around me. I felt this unconditional love. And I could feel that people were still worried whether I was going to come back to life or not. When they paddled my heart, I didn't feel the pain. I just felt being sucked back down into my body. My name is Bayford, and I've had 3 near-death experiences now, and I've got to stop dying. And so the first time was 2002. Life before my near-death experience, I really didn't believe that people had out-of-body experiences or even experienced it, because I'm a qualified and trained counsellor. So for me, I really sort of science-based, and so I need evidence. And so now when I work with clients, I try to give them as much evidence as I can. So the first time round, wow. My life before the near-death experience, I was working on a project in London for the elderly, and I really did enjoy it, but I was really unhappy in my relationship, shall I say. And I had 2 children. I still got 2 children, of course I have, but the children at that age, at that time, they were 5 and 7 years old. And I remember it very well, that where I felt I was juggling everything. I knew I had to work still, and I had to do the family chores. We had animals. And I remember that morning very clearly. It was like any other morning. I was getting ready for work. I was getting the children ready. They were a 5-year-old, my son, Nathan, and my daughter, who was 7 years old, Rebecca. And I remember just feeling like I had so much to do, and my partner was really unhelpful. And I was so unhappy. And I remember sort of getting the children into the car, getting ready to go to school. If someone had said to me that day that that was the day I was going to die, maybe I would have slowed down a bit. Maybe I would have told the children I loved them. Maybe I would have spent a little bit of extra time with them. But of course, we don't know these things. So I remember driving the children to school, taking them to the school gates. And I remember saying, I'm in a rush. I've got to go. I've got to catch the train. I've got to park the car up. I've got to catch the train. I've got to say goodbye. I'll see you guys later at the end of the day, when I was going to pick them up in the afternoon. And so I was like literally sort of pushing them in. And I hate thinking of it now, but pushing them in through the school gates. Um, I remember all I did was kiss them on their foreheads. And I remember, it makes me quite sad actually, but I remember my daughter really wanted to hold me. And I was like, no, Rebecca, it's going to be fine. Go to school. It's all good. I'll see you later. And she was only 7. And I just remember just rushing, and that always haunts me. And I remember running to the train station, running to catch the train, running to get into the office, running to get into London. And I remember working, and my mind it was at no time during the day thinking about the children, because I was just getting on with my work. And I remember working where I worked, it was to do with the elderly and trying to get volunteers to be part of a befriending scheme and to look after them. And I loved my job, absolutely loved it. And I remember the day so clearly that when I reflect back on it, I can still feel my feelings of being at work. And I remember I had to post a letter. It was regarding a client that she needed extra health and help care in her living situation. And I remember as I walked out the office, as I was going, I was like, oh, shall I leave now? Shall I leave a little bit later? How we get caught up in her head. And I had the letter in my hand, and I was saying goodbye to everyone. And they were in their 80s or 70s and 90s, and one person was playing the piano, and I remember that. And I was like, I'll see you tomorrow. And everyone's like, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Walked out of the office, walking down the road, and I got to the corner of the road, and there was a pedestrian crossing. And I remember I was thinking, shall I cross here? Shall I go get my newspaper for the train, because it's a boring train journey? Or shall I, wait till I get to the other end. Shall I leave it? I'm going to miss my train. So all these thoughts were going on in my head. And I remember pressing the button for the green man, the pedestrian crossing, to say it's okay, you can cross, and it was safe to cross. And I remember there were some other people that were joining me on that side of the road to cross over. So I pressed the button and I started to walk in, and I was looking both ways, as you do in London, because cars come from every direction and motorbikes. Got to the central aisle, the pedestrian bit there, and I remember I heard a voice in my head. I had to stop myself because I remember it was a familiar voice, and it was my nan's voice saying, "Don't go straight across the road, you've got to change at an angle and everything's going to be okay." And then I was thinking about, hang on, this voice sounds familiar. And my nan had passed over when I was 15. And this was when I was probably about 35 years old then. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to change direction now. And I'm going to go to the right-hand side. Police had said that if I had continued walking across the road, that when the van had been driving, I would have been, my head, my neck would have been severed. I would have gone through the windscreen. So it actually prevented me from having my neck, my head decapitated. So I was walking to the right to go to the newsagents to get a newspaper, and the van had hit me sort of 40 miles per hour. It had sort of driven straight through me. Later on, they said that the gentleman had been on the phone, and maybe he didn't see me, maybe lack of concentration, I don't know. I didn't feel the impact of the vehicle. That was the most important thing, but I should have done. But somehow I had checked out. So whether I'd started having that out-body experience then, I don't know. But all I know is my nan sort of being there, supporting me like an angel as such. I could feel that presence, that I was safe, that everything was going to be okay. But when we look at it, it was impossible because I'd already died. I had landed on the road. I remember sort of looking down at her body. I didn't have any pain. I wasn't experiencing no discomfort at all. But I remember looking down at her body, and I didn't know at the time that it was physically me because I had no pain. No pain was associated to any body. It was just, I felt very warm. I felt there was a bright light there. I just felt somewhere else. I didn't even know it was me, that I died. And then I remember looking down and seeing a body, and I remember feeling everybody's presence looking at this body, and I remember people were in shock. They were looking, they were worried, they didn't know what was happening to this individual, which I later found out was myself. And then there was part of me also that was aware that I was moving around, and I also was sitting now in the lorry. I was sitting in the cab of the driver, and he was moaning. Some woman had got knocked down, how irresponsible. He was trying to get his deliveries done for work, and he was telling his boss that, some woman had got knocked down. I could then hear the local radio station in his cab where he was sitting in this truck, and it was saying about they was going to airlift somebody and the road had been blocked off. And I still didn't even realize it was myself. When I was looking down at this body that was laid out, sprawled out in the road, I could see people, one person was shouting, saying, "I'm going to go get a towel, I'm going to put it under her neck." This was a lady who owned a hairdresser's, which I later went back to see after the incident a couple of years later to talk to her to say thank you. People were shouting, saying, "No, don't touch her. She might break you, she might have broken her neck." I saw a family member that was there looking at me, Uncle Peter. He knew it was me. He then phoned my partner, we had a bakery shop up the road at that time. I could see him running down, and I was like, well, why is he panicking? What's going on? I don't understand. And I remember seeing him placing his hand on my head and thinking, how am I going to look after Rebecca and Nathan, our children? At no point did he say, "Oh, I'm going to miss Anne," or "I love her," or anything. And that was my deciding fault, that was when I was going to leave him. But it was the strangest thing because I wasn't in my physical body. And so he was touching my head. But again, I didn't feel it. I was out of my body. I had no recognition of this at all. And so, like, even as a psychic medium now, when I work and I know I bring through loved ones on the other side, the same story exists, that they don't feel any pain when they pass over on the other side. They also have experiences of loved ones coming in to be by their side. And I know with myself that I had my nan by my side, that she was right there looking after me, holding my hand, but in spirit, not physically in my body, because I was not connected to my body. There was almost like a detachment. Where I went, I could see this light. It was a very bright light. And I just felt I was in this open space, very, very strong, bright light, but I could still see. My eyes didn't feel as if there was a pressure of seeing the light. I felt very warm. I felt connected to the space around me. I felt this unconditional love, this feeling that I was accepted, the first time I've ever felt accepted in the whole of my life. I just felt that I was surrounded with so much love. And like now, the work that I do, I feel that each time that when I'm connected to those in spirit, when I'm doing trance channeling, I'm connected to the light council, source energy, I feel it now when I do that, the work that I do. So when I was there in this white energy around me, I could feel that there was a moment where I was being told everything was going to be okay. And my nan was by my side. And then I started feeling as if I was somewhere else. That there was like a library of books, like information. There was like knowledge. There was wisdom there. That I was there having sort of a data download of information that was coming forward to me. And it needed me to die for me to receive it. And I had actually found out that, and I will go back to that in a moment when I return back to my body, but I died for 7 minutes. And so, but I didn't know that where I was. I just felt very comfortable, very warm. That this like library of books around me with all the knowledge, there was not just books. I mean, I could see them being pulled off the shelf by beings around me. So there were other beings there, not humans, but there was like guides, the spiritual team that were there sort of giving me information. And they were pulling out information from shelves. So there was scrolls being pulled out of containers, there was jars, there was other books that were being flicked through giving me information. The books felt as if they were made out of like a skin. So it felt as if it was like, well, is this the human skin and our soul, the information stored in this book? And I remember like a blueprint sort of being rolled out as if you were an architect that was drawing plans of how to build a house. But it looked like it was like my lifetimes, many past lives that I'd lived. And it was telling me information. And I remember that I could hear and feel the information, but not through my ears. It felt as if my soul was absorbing all the information. So you had individual beings like walking around me, but I couldn't see their feet. So it was like they were gliding around. They didn't need to walk like how we walked. And I remember seeing some individuals like had a cloak, like had a hood over them. Again, they felt as if they had wisdom and knowledge. Some of the individuals there, I felt that I had connection with, like they were my guides and my spiritual team. And I know now as I work that they come forward now when they're like my guides, when I'm bringing forward information or when I'm channeling. And I could feel this presence coming forward, like again from them, this unconditional love. And I remember them telling me information that I was feeling that I mustn't forget, I mustn't forget. Now, where I was standing, as I say, there was a figure to my left-hand side, a guide that I hadn't met before, that I felt I hadn't met. And I now know that I've met them in previous lifetimes. And I also felt my nan to my right-hand side, she was there sort of holding my space for me. And I remember sort of devices that there was like imagery that was coming out. So it's not words, but there was images of lifetimes that I'd been through before that they were giving me this download of information. But I was told that everyone that passes through this was a place where they would come, where they could work through if there was something that they needed to learn in a lifetime. So it's where souls were processing information. So being there, being in that space, I could feel that I needed to be there to have this information. Now, I was also being told the work that I would go on to do and how I would channel information, how I'd work with people, how I'd come back to planet Earth, and how I had messages that through my trance channeling that I would deliver messages now. And now I do that. But at the time when I first returned back, I it was all new to me. Then I had this strong feeling that I was being pulled back into my physical body. And by that time, yes, there were paramedics that were there at the scene of the crime. One had paddled my heart. I could see the ambulance arrived from above. So, out of body experience, I was looking down, I saw the ambulance arrived, and I could feel that people were still worried whether I was going to come back to life or not. When they paddled my heart, I didn't feel the pain. I just felt being sucked back down into my body. And it felt as if I was moving through a tunnel that was coming down very fast. It was pulling my body back in. And that's when I landed back in my body, my physical body, that I felt the pain. And then I was told that the pain was because I had physically landed back in. Recovering, I'd ripped my foot out of my ankle. My ankle joint had been ripped out, and I ended up with 7 breaks in my foot, and there were nerve damage and tendons that were ripped, and I had ongoing operations after that. My knee had been broken, my hip had been broken, my ribs of both sides had been fractured, and my spleen had been damaged. There was internal bleeding. My kidneys had been damaged too. So once I came out of hospital, which I was in intensive care for a while, it took 4 years to recover. There was 2 years where I was in a wheelchair, I was disabled, and then 2 years further from that where I had a walking stick and I had to learn to re-walk, and then diagnosed with post-traumatic stress because it was constantly being played out. But at the accident, when I came back to my body and feeling that, they put me into the ambulance. And on the way to the hospital, there were several times I'd left my physical body and was looking down at the top of the ambulance. I could see the numbers on the top of the ambulance. When I reached critical care, as in the sense of the hospital, the crash team, there were 3 different sets of crash team working on my body. And I was literally out of my body looking down at the situation. And I just remember the embarrassment of thinking, oh my God, I have no clothes on. If I was in my body, how I'd felt. And then when I was put into intensive care the next couple of days, holding the hand of the nurse, I said to her, "Where's my nan?" And she said, "Oh, you've had one of those experiences." And I said, "Yes." And I remember at that time that feeling left, abandoned, like, why had I returned? I couldn't work out. Later on, years now later, I've worked with many universities around the world of them exploring what's happened to me, and some of the information, because I am a counsellor and therapist as well as a psychic medium, I've helped with documentation to help hospitals that when they have somebody that says they've had a near-death experience, there now is a literature that's being completed, that's funded by the government in the UK, that information now has been used of some purpose for others to say that yes, there is such thing as a near-death experience and how to address that. So that was my first near-death experience, but I've had 3, as I said, in total, and the second one was slightly different. The second one, I remember I had pneumonia again, and my lungs were quite fragile. And during this particular time, I remember my daughter was in the house with me, but my lung totally collapsed. And I remember at the time, I never believed in angels. Again, I needed the evidence. And through this experience, I remember feeling that I said internally in my voice, "I just need some help." And I said, "God, I just need some help." And I remember from that experience, there was a huge thump, the big sound by the side of me. And I remember turning to my side, and I remember seeing a figurine, and it felt as if looked like an angel. And I was like, "Oh, come on, are you serious?" And I remember looking to the side, to my right-hand side, and I heard this voice saying, "I'm Archangel Michael. I'm here. How may I be of service to you? How can I serve you?" And I remember as he stepped forward, this feeling of him trying to help me. The ambulance was called and my lung had totally collapsed. I remember my daughter had called for the ambulance and I was rushed into hospital. And that was when it was trying to wake me up that there is such thing as angels. The third time was slightly different. I was due to have an operation, went into hospital. I remember the operating theatre was blue, and I remember there was all female women in there, even the anaesthetist. And I remember going through the surgery. I remember counting backwards, that feeling of totally surrendering. And that's the feeling that you can get when you go into trance mode and deep meditation. And when I go off and I connect to my guides, that feeling of just going under. And I remember during this procedure, all I know is 1 minute it was the blue room and I was in operating theatre, and then the next minute it was white around me, and I had this strong feeling that, oh, okay, I've done it again. And I remember going, oh, I'm really sorry. And I remember feeling as if I was being told off, and my guide was there. And I knew it was my guide because I'd worked with this guide a few times when I was alive. And this guide saying to me, you have to go back. You haven't completed this task. It's time for you to come back. You have a message. You have to bring the message back to planet Earth and help those around you. And I remember feeling, okay, I've got to go back. And as I say, where it was white room when I was there, white space, not a room with walls, but a white open space. And given that information, when I returned, I remember there were bells going off in the operating table, the blue rooms. I remember the anaesthetist bent over my face and said, oh my God, you gave us a close call. We'd lost you for a moment. And again, I found out that I had died for about 6 minutes this time. My heart had stopped 6 minutes. And I remember there was a woman sitting next to me, one of the nurses, and she held my hand and I gave her a message from her son who was on the other side, came straight in. And she said, oh, I know where you have been. So 3 times I had died, passed over. And then just 2 years ago, I had a brain seizure, a brain bleed, a mini stroke where it took 14 weeks to recover, where I wasn't talking or walking and my children had to look after me. They're adults now. And I feel that was just really literally, I was having a bit of an upgrade with the brain, shall I say. It was the circuitry was being rewritten, but not an out-of-body experience as such. But I knew that there was something that was being done to take me out of working for a while so that they could then give me some more information. And when I say they, I'd say that's like source energy, the divine energy came in. So overall, yes, it was a bit of a wake-up call and shock treatment, I would say. But that's my experiences that I've been through. My message to people is never think so far ahead that you're guaranteed time. Never think that, oh, I'll do that when I retire, or I'll do that next week, or I'll put that off. You never know. You're never guaranteed your next breath. Never. So I would always say, if there's something that you want to do, you have to do it. If there's something that I just had a client just before this, and she was wondering about her job and what she needs to do. And I said, I've always been told from spirit that you have to let your heart guide you. You have to let your passion drive you to where you should be. That's where your purpose is in life. It's not that we're meant to be doing a 3D world, that 9-to-5 job. Never put it off to retirement. Always do what you feel that from your heart center that you've got to do, and let that guide you. That's really, really important. But yeah, never put anything off. You're never guaranteed tomorrow. Okay, so if anyone would like to connect with me, whether that is to learn with me so I can teach you certain skill sets, or it is for a reading, you can always reach me through www.annbayford.com. I have my own YouTube channel and I'm on Instagram too, and I look forward to seeing you.